Good morning. We're going to pick things up in the Old Testament today because the Old Testament is awesome. It's also really confusing and weird and strange, but it's also awesome. So the last thing that you need to write right now in your journals, if you want to fill in the scripture, part at the top, we're going to the book of 1 Kings. So when you write it down, just write the number 1, and then next to it, Kings, and it's chapter 19. So 1 Kings 19, that's all you need to write, and then you can close your journals for the time being. I want to tell my version of what I think is one of the most epic events in the Bible. And especially this last time that I studied it, so much came out to me. But it centers around this guy, this prophet named Elijah. So everyone say prophet. Not like money prophet, but prophet. One more time, prophet. Prophet. Raise your hand if before today you've heard the word prophet. Awesome, hands down. I'm not sure what you think of when you hear the word prophet. Many people think of people who tell the future, who can see into the future. Anyone else think that when they think prophet? That's one of the most general ideas of what a prophet is. And in the Bible, prophets did that sometimes, but more often what prophets were messengers of God. So they were bringing forth some kind of message that they felt the Lord was speaking directly to them, so they were bringing some kind of truth. It didn't always have to be about the future. Most of the time, it was actually about what was going on in that day. So I'm not sure if you have a picture in your mind of what a prophet would look like, but this is the image in my mind of what a prophet looks like. One of my favorite characters ever, Yoda, and he comes to mind when I think of prophet, because when I think of prophet, I think like old wise man. And Yoda, if you know anything about Star Wars, is known for being wise. But it's not so much that he can see into the future, it's more that he can understand like the decisions that everyone is going to make and what that's going to do more than anyone else. So if he had the opportunity, he could talk to young Anakin and say, Anakin, if you go down this path, happen this will. Or if you do this, if you make this decision, if you are led by the Force, come out of the, I don't remember, I can't speak like Yoda, but he had the keen ability to understand 3 steps ahead of every decision, kind of like a master chess player. And he was very unassuming, right? He looks like a non-threat, but if you've watched Star Wars, you know that he is definitely a threat. And so this is what I think of when I think of a prophet. And so we're going to talk about Elijah today. And Elijah was a prophet, but now here's the one other thing about prophets. Prophets in their day were often not respected at all. Raise your hand if you know anything about the Grinch, who stole Christmas. Have you seen the Grinch? Oh, most of you. Perfect. All right, hands down. If you know, in the Grinch, until the end of the story or the movie where everything's a happy ending, most of the time, everyone in Whoville, how they feel and what they think about the Grinch is what people thought about prophets in the Bible times, because they thought they were these old crazy men who lived way up in the wilderness by themselves and had these random conversations and talked to themselves all the time and rambled on and on and on. So they were not respected a lot. So this guy Elijah was a prophet. And so let me set a brief context, real brief context. So way back in the Bible, God chose this one group of people, and he chose this group of people, and he rescued them, he delivered them from slavery, and he put them in this land, this beautiful land. This land was so amazing that the people wake up every morning and there are fresh graham crackers on the floor for them to eat. Like, that's how amazing the land was. It's in the Bible, go read it. Every morning they would wake up and God just provided fresh graham crackers for them. That's how amazing this land was. But he didn't give them this land just to keep for themselves. They were supposed to share it and to be a representation of this amazing, loving, gracious God. Okay? But they failed. They didn't want to stand out. They wanted to be like the rest of the world. And so one of the things that they complained about that they wanted was a king. So they weren't supposed to have any kings, but they kept complaining, God, well, how come they have a king? We don't have a king. Give us a king. Graham crackers aren't good enough. We need a king. So complaining and complaining, because God, this God of the Bible is a God of freedom and free will, he gave them what they wanted. He gave them kings. And most of the kings in the Old Testament, in the story of the Bible, lack of a better term, they sucked. These kings were terrible people, okay, who did terrible things. Because, just like so many other leaders, they just got consumed with money and wealth and power and popularity and fame. And what happens with all of us when we start thinking about those things, usually other people suffer as a result, because we will start treating others dishonestly for the sake of growing our own wealth and getting what we want. So, so we have this crazy man Elijah living in this city, and he's a prophet. He's speaking for God. And the king at the time was Ahab and his partner Jezebel. So he was one of the many kings who was just a terrible person. And one of the things that Ahab did was he encouraged all the people to worship this other god from this foreign land, Baal. Okay, and this just wasn't another god from a different belief system. This was a god whose worshipers had to do terrible, terrible things to please this god. So if you worship Baal, you might be called to hurt other people, to hurt members of your own family. Followers of Baal had to do terrible things to please this god, things that we're not even old enough in this room to talk about. And that's why God was so angry, because they had left this God who gave them everything that they needed in this beautiful land for this other God that caused them to hurt each other and themselves and their own families. So, that's the context for the story. You guys with me? Ready to go? Ready for the epicness? Okay, so Elijah comes and he's sick of seeing all of his people suffer, and he's sick of this King Ahab. And so he comes to a point, he's like, I've had enough. Goes to the center of the city, because in those times, the cities, they were very condensed and centralized, so everything pretty much happened in one place. So he goes to the center and he tells the king, all right, you bring your God, I'll bring my God. We'll bring an animal to sacrifice, we'll put it on an altar, and we'll burn it, and then we'll call out to our gods, and whoever's God rains down fire from the sky, that will be the true God. So not only that, it wasn't only you bring your God, I'll bring my God. Hey, you bring your best 850 prophets, and I'll just bring myself. So 450 prophets who specifically were worshiping Baal, and another 400 who are worshiping this other God. He said, bring 850 of your best prophets and your God, and I'll meet you with myself and my God. And we'll see who rains down fire. Okay? So, they all get together in the morning. Everyone can see. And so the morning starts, and all the prophets of Baal and this other god start doing their rituals, right, to call to their God. And they start praying. Nothing happens. Time goes on. Hours go on. After hours, they're wailing. They're crying out. They're dancing. They're doing all these ridiculous things to try to get their God to prove that he is God. Morning passes, afternoon passes, it's like afternoon, early evening. By this time, most of the people will stop paying attention because they're like, yo, I got things to do. I can't sit around and watch everything and watch a whole bunch of nothing. And all the time, also, Elijah, he's taunting all the prophets as they're wailing and screaming out. Say, maybe you should yell a little louder. Oh, I know, your God is traveling. He's just out of town, right? That's what's going on. Look, this is in the Bible. This is what it says. He's just traveling. He's not here. Maybe you should try a little louder. Oh, I know, he's asleep. That's what it is. He's taking a nap. Maybe you should try a little louder, guys. Like for hours all day, he's taunting these prophets. So you can imagine how angry these prophets were. Like, what if we were trying to have this silent moment right now and some stranger came in and he just started mocking us like that? Like, we would be really uncomfortable and upset. I know I would. But that's what Elijah was doing. So finally, end of the day, Elijah says, enough, I've had enough. It's over. He steps to the mount. He says, my God, God of Abraham, I'm paraphrasing, so, my God, you are the God of Abraham, you are my God, show them that I am your servant, show them that you are God, make your name known, God, to these people. But here's the reason why he said, not so that they would simply turn away from this other God, but he said, make your name known to these people so that their hearts will be turned back to you. Because again, the God of the Bible is a God who wants people not to do all of his work for him, but because he loves them and wants a relationship with them. So, God, please make your name known. Boom! Fire comes raining down like a comet that breaks through the atmosphere and lands right on the animal. Burns up the animal, burns up the altar, soaks up all the water that's around the area. Just this rain of fire directly onto the sacrifice. Just like that. Mic drop. I mean, what do you say at that point? The victor has been determined, yes? All day these prophets crying out, nothing happened. Elijah steps to the plate, boom, fire. I mean, really, think about it. It's like this guy. Okay? Yeah, picture Thor. He's coming up out of the ashes. He says, I've had enough. He stands. You know, when he puts his hand up, you know what's coming, right? If you've seen Thor, if you know who Thor is, and you start seeing the thunder rolling in, you start hearing the thunder rolling in, you see the clouds coming in, and then all of a sudden lightning, boom, hammer, right? And you know it's over. And it's like, who's your God? That's what happened. It's an amazing end to if this was a movie, this would be the climax of the movie, except it's not. So all of the people had seen this. They saw the fire raining down, and they did exactly, hopefully, what all of us would do, which is just fall to the ground and say, obviously, his God is the true God. And they all bowed down, and they acknowledged the winner of this God battle, this epic God battle. But who do you think was not happy? Yeah, King Ahab. I mean, for one, these 850 prophets suddenly looked like losers, absolute losers, who had wasted their life. But even more so, King Ahab, who brought that God in the first place and encouraged everyone to worship. And here's the thing about kings. And you know, kings are just people who were once kids, so really, it's any of us. Is that at some point we could come to a place where we are less concerned with what is true and more concerned with being right. And that's exactly the place that King Ahab was in his heart and in his mind. He had just seen what was true. He had just seen the true God. But yet he was angry because he was embarrassed, because he was wrong. So what he does is he and Jezebel sentence Elijah to death. They send to have him killed. I don't know about you. Ahab is stupid. If I saw this guy speak and immediately fire comes out of the sky, I don't want to be his enemy. I'm not going to sentence him to death because I'll probably die. Somehow Ahab is an idiot, even though he's the king, and he says, no, we got to kill this guy. Elijah gets word, and he flees. He runs away. Now, let me pause again. Like, Elijah was there, right? He saw what happened. Like, he commanded God to bring down fire, and God brought down the fire. If that was me, if I was this guy, when I see that happen, I'm fearless. Like, test me. Someone test me so I can bring down fire again. If I have a hammer, like, I'm really not fearing much. Elijah had just done this amazing, powerful act, and yet immediately he forgot. It seems like he forgot what he had just done. He forgot what he had just seen, and suddenly he's fearful and runs for his life. So he flees the city out to the wilderness, and he comes to a place where he's over it. He doesn't want to be there anymore. He's forgotten all the people who actually listened to him. All the people's hearts he actually won over. He's focused on the king who wants to kill him, and he's utterly hopeless. Like he comes to a place where, God, I don't want to be here anymore. And then he escapes to a cave, and he's basically in the cave just waiting to die because he's never planning on going back. He thinks he's failed, despite everything that's happened. Despite him basically being Thor, he feels like he's failed. And so he's sitting in this cave, but again, the repeating theme in the Bible is that God is always pursuing his people. Doesn't matter how far they try to run, doesn't matter how successful or how failed they are. He is always chasing after them. So the Spirit of God finds Elijah in this cave, hopeless. And so here's what the scripture says. There was a great wind. Not just a wind, not like our Fontana winds. This wind, it says in the story, splits the forest, kind of like the Red Sea. Splits the forest. This wind was so strong, it says, it split the rocks in half. So a wind split the rocks in half. That's not even like a hurricane. I don't even know what to call that wind. So picture yourself in this cave, huddled up. You're looking outside the cave, outside the opening, and you just see wind destroying everything. If you're in a place where you think, when you're calling out to God, God, take me now, you'd probably think like, this is my time. But the scripture says God was not in the wind. And then a great earthquake came, and not the little measly earthquake we felt 2 weeks ago here. This was like a God earthquake. I want no part of a God earthquake. But picture yourself in the cave. Picture yourself in a cave when an earthquake happens. Forget the classroom. You're in a cave. What are you afraid of? Everything coming down on you. And again, Elijah's already in a state of hopelessness. He's just waiting. But the scripture says God was not in the earthquake. And then came a great fire. So a picture, again, you're in the cave, and you just see flames outside the opening, desolating the wilderness around you. Hopelessness. And you're probably waiting again, saying, this is my time. But the scripture says God was not in the fire. And immediately after that, the scripture says, God came in a gentle whisper. So, Elijah hears this gentle whisper. He puts on his cloak. He walks to the opening of the cave, and he looks out, and he hears the voice of the Lord, the voice of God, and the voice of God is saying, literally, this is what the scripture says, what are you doing here? Which makes perfect sense to me if I'm God. Like, Elijah, were you not there? Did you not just see what happened? I'm pretty sure you were, because I used you. Like, you brought down fire. I made you successful. What you commanded, I did. You won all of those people's hearts. Yeah, the king is after you to murder you, but you're still here, and you still have work to do. And so Elijah leaves the cave, and he follows the voice of God that came to him in a whisper. And we don't have time to go through the rest of his life, but at the end of Elijah's story, so what happens is he trains up his next disciple, the next prophet, Elisha. Kind of confusing. Why are their names like almost identical? I don't know. But he trains up this other prophet to continue his work. And when it comes time for Elijah to die, it actually doesn't say he ever died. What the scripture says is he was taken up in a whirlwind. I don't know about you, but that's how I want to go to heaven. Like, don't let me die from cancer or in a bad accident or some other illness. Like, just take me up in a tornado. How awesome would that be? But picture Elijah back in this cave, not wanting to go on anymore, and he was ready to die by a cave toppling on him from an earthquake or a wind coming in or any kind of natural disaster, basically, that he saw happen around him. And yet, what saved him was a gentle whisper that led him out. And in the end, God preserved him as long as he needed to, and then just took him up. Not how Elijah would have guessed his life would have gone. And so many things, I think, to learn about Not only God, but about ourselves and who we are. Because Elijah's greatest failures, I think, are often our greatest failures. Because here's what you will see. You can do all of the right things, and people will still hate you for no reason. People will not like you. You can do the best for yourself. You can look out for other people, and there will be people who have no part in your life, and they will dislike you for no reason. You can be as successful as you can be in your grades, in making money, in acquiring big homes, having these popular, glamorous jobs, and you can still end up unhappy and feeling lonely. And that's what happened to Elijah. But the same thing is true, which is always true in the Bible, is that wherever you are and whatever you're doing and wherever you're running to or from, God is right there chasing after you, because regardless of what pain or disappointment you may feel, because that's just a part of life, and he doesn't protect us from that. I mean, he doesn't spare us from that. If we're in this life, we're going to have disappointments and pain. That's just the state of our broken world. But amidst all of the disappointing times, God is always chasing after us so that we can be fulfilled and have peace and know that we belong here, regardless of where we are. So, think about Elijah. Like, what is it that why is it that he only responded to a whisper? And here's what I think. Like, he had seen the amazing work of God through fire. Like, there's nothing else to be excited about or impressed by at that point. Like, if you've seen fire come out of the sky by your own command, I mean, what else is going to impress you? You know what I mean? Like, you've seen it all. And maybe Elijah had come to the place where it was just normal for him. He got into a certain place that was just normal. Everything was normal. And it took something radical for him to be led and to be called. And I think the same is true of us. It's so easy for us to get caught up in our daily cycles of school and sports and other after-school stuff that we're doing in our homes and our families, that we get in this cycle of repetitive things. Does anyone feel like school is just repetitive every single day? Like, I wake up same time, gotta go to school, math still sucks every day, lunch is great, then I gotta go home and do homework, and it's just, everything becomes normal. Even the things that are awesome become normal. I don't know if you remember, but when you were in kindergarten, you loved school. Loved it. But things become normal. But here's the thing. Sometimes God has to yell at us. Sometimes God appears to us in a burning bush or in a storm. Sometimes he has to be loud. But other times, when the rest of the world is loud, is when God whispers.
We're going to start with the breathing exercise together, and then we'll continue at our own pace, and we'll just take this time to simply sit and be with God. So let's make sure that we're sitting up nice and straight. Our back should be pressing against the pew cushion, and gently close your eyes. Bring your left hand to your belly and start to breathe in through your nose, feeling your belly expand. Open your mouth and let it go. Again, breathe in through your belly, letting it expand until you feel it at the crown of your head. Open your mouth and let it go. One more time as a family, breathing in through our nose and out through our mouths. Start breathing in through your nose and out through your nose. Taking nice long inhales and exhales. On your next big inhale, count to 1, 2, 3, and exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. Inhale, 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Continue to breathe nice and slow in through your nose and out through your nose. No need to keep counting. Remember that meditation is a practice and that stillness is hard, and that's okay. Be patient with yourself, knowing that God is just excited to sit with you. If your mind begins to wander, it's okay. Imagine your thoughts like clouds just passing by. Come back to your breath. Let go of any expectations you have for the next few minutes and let yourself to simply rest physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually in the presence of God. Breaths together as the worship team comes up to lead us in two closing songs. Exhale all of your air out until you can feel your core contract, like you're flexing your belly. And then take a big inhale to let your belly expand. rising through the lungs and the heart, through the crown of the head, and open your mouth to let it go. One more, inhaling deeply and exhaling completely.